Ah, hi. It's been a little while, but it is good to see you all again. And this is another weather update. It's been a long time since I've done one of these, mainly because, well, the weather's been a little quiet. And it's going to start to uptick, I think, once again. And I'll talk about why I think that is. But we've been kind of stuck in an omega block pattern. Not too much chasing from me. Not too much chasing from the Michigan Storm Chaser crew. I mean, there has been some. But really, the fact of the matter is that omega block pattern has been kind of cutting things out and kind of keeping things quiet. And I think we're going to start to see a little bit of an uptick as that pattern starts to break down and we start shifting into more of an active pattern, especially since the fall season's coming up. Typically, that's when we start to see our troughs start to dip in, and that's also when we start to see our more active weather and those transitioning periods between summer and winter. So we're going to take a look at some of the weather models. We're also going to take a look at some of the climate models, okay, some of the climate forecasts that could contribute to a more active winter and, yes, even a more active spring. There's been some hints about that you've probably seen on social media. So I'd like to put out that data so you guys can look at it and then kind of maybe decipher what I'm thinking with regards to that type of information, okay? Yeah, weather's been quiet. You've probably seen the Samaritan's Purse trips that my crew's been going on over the past couple of months, which have been super awesome. I would encourage anyone who's watching this to go on one. But we're taking a group of 16 out next week to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you guys could be in prayer for that trip, that would be much appreciated. We'll probably roll out another video about that at some point. But let's dive right into the weather. Again, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe button. It really helps out and it really supports the stuff that I do, and it just gives me an opportunity to, spread the word about different weather events across the area. So thanks for your support in that regard. But first of all, we're going to talk about probably an oscillation out in the Pacific Ocean. This is again a climate, I guess, a sea surface temperature pattern that can indirectly influence our weather. This has more of a primary indirect influence, I guess you could say, which is why we're going to talk about it and what changes it's being made. So this is the ENSO, the El Nino or Southern Oscillation. Okay, it exists in three different phases. We're going to talk about, again, the El Nino phase, which is what we've been in as of recently, the La Nina phase, which is the cooler phase, and then the ENSO neutral, which is the lukewarm. So it's like the porridge is too hot, the porridge is too cold, but the third was just right, the neutral phase. That's kind of what we're talking about here. But what you can see here is this is the actual sea surface temperatures that are being depicted, okay, in this little graphic here. And you can see the change that's starting to happen here on this little map. So you can see that much of the Pacific Ocean, again, this is right along the equator, okay? So you can see Mexico's right here, South America's right here on the map. And again, you can access this information for yourself. The link's right here. But what you can see here is that, again, your winds are going from east to west along the equator, okay? So the motion of the surface level water is going to follow that, right? But what you're seeing here is you're starting to see a little bit of a cooling trend start to take shape on the southern fringe of this, okay? This is the surface temperatures of the Pacific Ocean. What is happening here is actually a little bit of upwelling of some cooler ocean water that is starting to cool down the surface temperatures of the Pacific Ocean. So as that happens, it actually will affect our climate a little bit here in the United States, okay? It's an El Nino shifting to a La Nina, all right? So that transition will influence our weather, and I'll kind of explain how that is going to be the case in just a second. But here's the official forecast from the Climate Prediction Center. Again, publicly available information. You can take a look at this for yourself. But what they're expecting is a transition from ENSO neutral to La Nina in the next couple of months, with a 71% chance of La Nina during October through December 2025. And then thereafter, La Nina is favored, but chances decrease to 54%. So these bars are an indicator of this, and you can see that higher chance for a La Nina during the winter months. Well, December, okay? October through December 2025, and it kind of stays in the La Nina phase throughout much of the winter. Typically, what that means for the United States, which we'll take a look at this here, is it's going to be a wetter and colder winter, okay? Because what's happening with the La Nina, it actually does tend to weaken or cause the Pacific jet stream to be a little bit weaker, and the polar jet stream becomes a little bit more varied. Okay, so it kind of floats around a little bit. This information right here is from climate.gov. But variable polar jet stream, which again, if that polar jet stream gets farther south, we get that colder air. And then again, as it kind of moves around, we start to see a little bit of motion changes in the atmosphere, okay? And we also tend to see a more wetter climate, okay, based on that. Now, with the El Nino pattern, the Pacific jet stream is actually a little bit stronger. So with that stronger jet stream in the south, that actually contributes to generally a warmer pattern for the northern fringe. Why? Because you're starting to see that push of warmer air start to kind of maintain itself, okay? Now, it also usually contributes to a drier pattern for us, which again, that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with what's up here, most typically. Okay, that La Nina pattern, okay, is going to allow the polar jet stream to have a little bit more leeway, okay? Mainly because that Pacific jet stream doesn't have as much power, and that warmer air is not really going to have as much fuel to be pushed up into our area, and then the polar jet stream can kind of have a bit more say in what it does, okay? So think of the ENSO oscillation as kind of the three different types of porridge from the three bears, okay? La Nina's too cold, El Nino's too hot, and then ENSO neutral. The third was just right. That's kind of what we're talking about with this in regards to it. But again, this is why I would kind of start to think in my own mind, my own little storm chaser brain. Well, that's likely going to mean a bit of a colder winter and maybe more rain or more snow. Okay, not saying it's going to mean more snow. Typically it will, well, especially if you're in the Keweenaw Peninsula. But most places, I would say, generally expect maybe cooler than average winter and potentially a snowier winter. Now, does that mean that's going to happen? No, because this is just one factor. It is a more weighted factor with regards to the pattern that we have, but it's still just one factor. There's multiple things that could take place that could totally change that. But it's one we look at as kind of a signal for saying, okay, this is likely what is going to occur. We also take a look at this with regards to the spring season, okay? So the spring season, as you can see, is also being featured here, okay? Again, this graph is showing the set of 3 months and the chances. January, February, March, April, May, June. Notice what is happening here, okay? The La Nina phase, or the probabilities for La Nina phase, are starting to kind of phase out, and we're starting to see a transition more into a neutral, okay, right in that middle ground, okay? Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that these two extremes aren't really being exercised, okay? Rather, you're kind of, but they're going to start to compete, okay? And you're going to kind of start to see a transition between the two, okay? And historically speaking, with regards to this type of pattern that is taking shape based on what the probabilities are given by the Climate Prediction Center, we can actually take a look at some historical data with regards to the potential for more severe weather. Now, am I saying that this is going to lead to a higher likelihood of severe weather? Well, there's a signal for that, but again, keep in mind, this is just one factor. So we're not going to totally say for sure this is going to lead to massive tornado outbreaks and mass craziness. We can't say that. However, we can say that there is a signal for an uptick in severe weather during the spring season based on what is happening with the Southern Oscillation. So again, this is actual data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration talking about what happens historically when we see the evolution of the Southern Oscillation in a certain way. So what you can see here is if the ENSO evolution in the spring maintains a stagnant El Nino, okay? So again, the El Nino, going back to this graphic, is that extended Pacific jet where it's stronger on the southern fringe of the United States and it's warmer and drier on the northern fringe. This is showing the winter pattern, but again, it can still kind of follow suit a little bit with regards to the pattern in early and late spring, right? So, ENSO evolution in spring, you can see that it's really minimized across the continental United States. It's really just Louisiana, Mississippi, Florida regions, okay? And then what you can see here is from the El Nino to La Nina, okay, it actually favors more of a Midwest type deal. And then also in the plains where you have Kansas, Nebraska, those types of places, okay, dealing with it. And then a resurgent La Nina, something there where it's a consistent La Nina, you can see that, whoa, there's actually a rather robust potential for tornado outbreaks historically based on this ENSO evolution where the La Nina sort of maintains hold, okay? And then this is where we are at, okay? Based on the probabilities from the Climate Prediction Center. This chart right here, okay? And you can see the ENSO evolution in spring, what's going to happen? We're going from La Nina towards an ENSO neutral, which will eventually, potentially, shift to a El Nino. I mean, you can look back at the forecast here and you can see that little bar for El Nino beginning to rise. Okay, I'm just reading it based on this data right here. Okay, but if you look at the ENSO evolution in spring, you can start to see, again, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio has that lower risk. Okay, but it also does go out into Illinois, parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, and then back out towards Kansas, Oklahoma, to a typical tornado alley. Okay, again, you can definitely tell that that's showing up in portions of the Great Lakes. Okay, a lower probability. So again, this is why I'm starting to think, well, we may start to see a little bit more active weather as we get into the spring season. Okay, is that for certain? No. This is just a signal based on the ENSO, but it's just something we want to pay attention to, something we just want to keep in mind, and just as we look at future data that begins to come in, we can start to draw more, I guess, better conclusions based on how things are going to unfold. Because, again, this is one particular oscillation settle out in the Pacific Ocean. There are multiple other oscillations. You look at the North Atlantic oscillation, you look at the, there's multiple different oscillations that you're going to look at, not other than just this one. Okay, the Arctic oscillation also has influence, especially on our winter weather. We're going to want to keep that in mind too. The Madden-Julian oscillation, the one out near the, I guess, north of Australia. I'm trying to figure out exactly what that's called. Oh my goodness, how did that escape my mind? It's, what do they call it? It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be horrible. The area with a lot of land, a lot of islands. I feel so bad at forgetting this right now. My brain. I got to bed at 1:30 last night, so bear with me here. Anyway, but let's talk what's coming up next couple of weeks, okay? So here we are with the, I guess, weather models that we have put in place. We're looking at the Euro right now. What I'm looking at is the potential for a trough to make its way through the continental United States, okay? And this is the first, I'd say, significant trough that we've seen in rather a while. And again, typical for fall season, we start to see these troughs start to make their way through. We see them during the fall, we see them during portions of winter, usually the beginning and end of winter, and then we start to see it in the spring as well. And that's what contributes typically to our severe weather events in the spring in particular. This one, I mean, we're watching it. Are we saying it's leading to severe weather yet? No, we can't say that. Okay. However, we can say that it is going to change our weather across the United States next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend. Okay. So let's take a look at it. As we progress this forward, you can see that troughs. You can't really see the trough at this current moment, but again, warmer than average. You've got a nice ridge that's built into portions of the continental United States, and we're going to start to see likely some warmer temperatures there as a result. But then this trough starts to make its way through. There's your trough, okay? And it starts to kind of deepen as it gets into portions of the southern United States. Now, the position of this is still variable. We've seen weather models that have shifted it north. We've seen weather models that have shifted it south. Can we say with the exact location yet? Again, we are still talking 192 hours out. So, long time. Okay, this is next Sunday morning. That's what's being shown here. Okay, but as we progress forward, you can see that the trough does deepen and kind of makes its way across portions of, well, the Appalachian region, the Dixie Valley region. So again, likely if this holds true, the severe weather threat is going to focus itself probably down here somewhere. Okay. However, if it shifts north, could lead to some more active weather across the Great Lakes as well. Okay, but you can see that trough makes its way through, brings some cooler temperatures, maybe some wind with it, and then we'll be watching for this one as well as we get into longer range. But basically what I'm seeing with the height anomalies here is that there's a signal for a couple systems to make their way through during the mid to late October timeframe, which again, I will likely be able to chase those if anything happens in the Great Lakes. So that's going to be that'll be good to keep an eye on for myself here and for the sake of you guys as we provide coverage. So again, with a typical trough, we tend to pay attention to the speed of the winds at different levels of the atmosphere, the wind shear that is going to be present with these. So let's go forward, get back to that time where we start to see that trough make its way into portions of the Great Lakes. By the time we get into the midday on the 19th, you can see that at the 500 millibar level, the upper level winds are cranking across around this trough, and it starts to kind of eject over portions of the Appalachian region. What's being shown here, it looks like. Trough ejection takes place. It starts to occur across the Mississippi River Valley, and then it may bring some stronger winds even up into portions of Indiana and Ohio. If you get a sounding out ahead of this Monday night, again, the sounding's probably not going to look too good. Yeah, it doesn't look too great, but again, some dynamics are looking to potentially be in place for maybe some severe weather. Again, long range model though, going to change quite a bit, position, timing, and location. But again, just a signal for a system to make its way through is kind of what we want to watch out for at this point, because weather's been pretty quiet. When people start talking about these systems again, they're going to be like, oh my goodness, the system's coming back. And we still have 192 hours before the system hits. So we're going to wait. But going forward, you can see that that trough makes its way through. And then we have to watch for the next one that makes its way through around the next weekend. So just a little bit of a signal there just to keep an eye on with regards to the upcoming weather pattern. And this is what the Euro is showing its development later on. And the models have been pretty consistent on a low pressure system developing with this trough that will bring some more showers and thunderstorms to portions of especially the southern continental United States. It also this model does output it across portions of Indiana and Ohio. Michigan looking like it's going to be on the northern fringe, which usually doesn't bring too much severe weather. So it would mainly just be rain if this were to verify. But again, these weather models are going to change. So you're going to keep that in mind as we go through this little output. The GFS, again, just to show you kind of the variability in the models here, which there's a lot still. The GFS really shows this low pressure system to make a northward trend and be much weaker. So that's why we can't really cast too much of a certainty with regards to things that are going to take place, because models are so varied, okay? But there's still things we can just watch out for in regards to the signal. The Euro, it tends to be a little bit better. I prefer the Euro with regards to looking at these particular setups. So that's why we're just sending out a little bit of signal. So anyway, that's kind of all I wanted to show you guys. I want to talk about the El Nino, the La Nina transition, and kind of what it favors for the next upcoming months, and then the next several days with regards to the uptick in, I guess, dynamic changes with our atmosphere. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope this video was helpful. Hope this video provided some insight into the talk that's going around social media. I mean, you can get little paragraphs, but if you go into a little bit deeper and a little bit detail, you kind of start to get some clarification in regards to what this actually means. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Make sure to like, subscribe. Maybe we'll throw out a couple more videos here and there, especially if we get to the winter. In the winter, I really like to make these videos because it talks about snowfall and snowfall totals and how it could affect travel. Pretty big deal for the Great Lakes region. So thanks for watching, everybody. We will be chasing next weekend if something does come to fruition. Be in prayer for that Samaritan's Purse trip next week. Thanks for watching, y'all. And I will see you all next time.